You have two choices, Gulnara. Either you deny your faith and become my daughter again, or you pack your things and never set foot in this house again. That was the sentence my father pronounced in the bitter cold of the Tian Shan Mountains in the dead of winter. Those words weren't just harsh. They split my life in two. I was 19 years old, and before me lay the cruelest choice I had ever faced. Follow the God who had given me new meaning, or stay with the family who had brought me into this world. My name is Gulnara Toktogulova, born in Bishkek, the heart of Kyrgyzstan. Growing up in a culture like mine means learning from an early age that family is not just a home. It is your roots, your honor, your destiny. To break away from it is to uproot your very identity. In our home, everything followed an unquestionable order, established before I was born. My father, Nurlan, a civil servant, ruled the household with unshakable authority. My mother, Ainura, was a teacher and the silent arm of a rigid structure. Her voice rarely dissented, and my grandmother Malika always repeated like a mantra, "A Kyrgyz woman must know her place." Traditions were the backbone of our existence. Any attempt to challenge them was seen as weakness, almost treason. I still remember the first time I dared to think differently. I was about 12 years old, and learned at school that the earth revolved around the sun. Something simple, but it contradicted one of our old stories. When I told him at dinner, my father put down his fork with a thud that echoes in my memory to this day. In here, we follow the old ways. What you learn outside stays outside, he said, cold as ice. School then became my only breathing space, where I could think freely, even if only for a few moments. When I was accepted into college, my father simply said, "Study, but never forget who you are or where you come from. Some doors aren't made for people like us." At the time, I thought it was an exaggeration. Now I understand it was a warning. Years later, I was sitting across from him, looking at his desk covered with printouts of Bible verses, proof of my betrayal. He gave me 7 days, 1 week to erase what I had become, or to leave. And so, on a freezing morning, with snow covering everything in white, I closed the door to my childhood for the last time. In my backpack, a few clothes, a family photo, and a small Bible that had transformed my life. The slam of the door behind me sounded like a final goodbye. In that moment, to my family, I was dead. What came next was harder than I could have imagined. I spent entire nights at the Bishkek train station, trying to ignore the cold that pierced my skin and the hunger that tore at me from within. I slept hugging my backpack, afraid to even close my eyes. Through my tears, I asked myself, is it worth it? Does God really exist? And does he care? The world is full of beautiful stories about faith, but few talk about what it means to believe when it costs you absolutely everything. In Kyrgyzstan, changing your religion is not a cause for celebration. There is no cake or warm hugs. Here, abandoning the faith of your ancestors is the same as becoming a traitor, not only to your family, but to the history of your people. And that is why I tell my story, not to be seen as a heroine, but as someone ordinary, who had to choose between two loves that could not coexist. My journey was through the Valley of Shadows, a place where truth comes at a high price, paid with silence, tears, and heartbreaking losses. But in that same valley, surrounded by abandonment and cold, I found a light, one that resisted all the rejections, traditions, and freezing nights on the streets, a light that no one could extinguish. Today, I invite you to take a few steps with me on this path, not to feel sorry for yourself, but to understand what it means to lose everything for something you truly believe in, and perhaps to realize that sometimes the deepest act of love for your family is precisely having the courage to be who you are, even if it breaks their hearts, and yours. I remember it like it was yesterday. Fall 2018 was tinged with copper and gold hues on campus trees. I was running late to my constitutional law class when I bumped into someone on the library steps, sending our books scattering across the floor. "Sorry," I said without looking up. "It's okay," a soft voice replied. When I looked up, she smiled. "My name is Ainagul." There was something about her that made me stop for a second. It wasn't her looks or her clothes. It was a kind of peace, an inner silence that was almost impossible to find in noisy college hallways. As we gathered up our books, I noticed a small volume with a worn cover that she quickly tried to hide. At the time, I thought it was odd, but I didn't ask. I found out later that we lived in the same dorm. We started studying together, first out of convenience, then out of affinity. We met in the library, then in the campus cafeteria, where, according to her, they served the best food, biscuit of the city. One of those afternoons, in the middle of a discussion about political theory, she asked me a seemingly simple question. Have you ever wondered if there is something beyond all this? Something bigger than traditions, rules, ourselves? I said yes, but instinctively lowered my tone. Asking that kind of question in my family was dangerous. Ainagul understood. She came from a family like mine, too. In Talas, her father was known for his strictness. Everything was mandatory. Prayers, fasting, silence, she said. And when I asked her why she spoke in the past tense, she smiled wryly. Because I found something that changed everything. Over time, our friendship became a shelter. I shared with her the pressures I felt, the suitors my father had chosen, my grandmother's advice about being a good Kyrgyz daughter, the fear of disappointing those who raised me. My father always said that there are 3 paths a woman should follow: the path of tradition, the path of family, and the path that leads to marriage. Nothing beyond that. It was on a cold night in our dormitory that Ainagul held my hand with a care that bordered on the sacred. What if there was a 4th way? She whispered. One that would set you free, even if everything around you tried to hold you back. Slowly, she took a book wrapped in a blue silk scarf from her backpack. This has changed my life, she said, almost in reverence. It's not religion as we know it. It's not rules. It's freedom. It's relationship, he explained. When I unwrapped the handkerchief, my heart raced. It was a Bible, the forbidden book, the same one my father once called a foreign threat, something dangerous and subversive. My hands were shaking. I can't, I mumbled, handing the book back as if I were holding something radioactive, but it was too late. A seed had already been planted there, silent, unobtrusive, but full of life, and nothing would ever be the same again. If my family finds out, I'll be in trouble, I whispered, looking around warily. Ainagul just nodded, serene. I'm not asking you to believe me. I just ask that you listen to me. And I listened. Sitting in a quiet corner of Dubovi Park, away from the hustle and bustle of the city, she told me about a completely different God, from the one I had learned to fear since I was a little girl. He was not the God of punishment, of burdens, of the constant fear of making mistakes. He was a God of love, a love that did not impose, but invited. This God doesn't want you to live with your head down, she told me. He wants you to look up and face him as a daughter, not as a servant afraid of being discarded. I returned to the dorm that afternoon with a heavy heart and a racing mind. Everything she had said was radically different from what I had heard all my life, and yet there was a subtle truth there, a soft, almost forgotten voice that seemed to finally find its way into my heart. It was at that moment that I felt I was in front of something dangerously beautiful, something that could turn my life upside down, but that, at the same time, promised me a freedom that I never knew was possible. Then came Tuesday, and changed everything. Ainagul appeared with a package hidden under her coat. It's yours now, she said, placing a small, black-covered Bible in my hands. The pages were as thin as petals, and just touching them made me shiver. She had obtained it through an underground church in Bishkek. I knew the risk, and so did she. This is too dangerous, I muttered. She just smiled. The truth is always dangerous where lying has become customary. I hid the book like a stolen diamond. I sewed a pocket inside my pillowcase and tucked it away. During the day, I carried on as if nothing had changed, the model daughter, the disciplined student. But at night, during the quietest hours, I would lock myself in the teachers' bathrooms or hide in forgotten corners of the library and read. I read it hungry. It was the Gospel of John that completely captured me. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. These words wouldn't leave me alone. They followed me through the university hallways, during silent lunches, on walks around campus. And you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. This phrase became a constant whisper inside me. Was it really possible to have freedom that didn't depend on my father's approval, my grandmother's traditions, or the cultural expectations that had tied me down since birth? On a freezing night, Ainagul made me an invitation that made my heart beat faster. Some friends are getting together tomorrow to talk about the book. Do you want to come? I knew what she meant. He knew he was about to cross an invisible, irreversible line. Gatherings like this were not only illegal to many, they were seen as treason, a break with everything we had been taught to uphold. Still, I went. The meeting was in a simple apartment in a Soviet building with dark hallways and peeling walls. When the door opened, I saw a group of 12 people sitting in a circle, men and women, young and old, all with eyes that shone as if they carried a flame the outside world did not understand. Max, a gentleman with a soft voice and kind eyes, led the meeting. There, for the first time, I saw a faith without fear, a faith that did not require masks, but offered shelter. A gray-haired woman shared how she kept her faith hidden during the Soviet years. Another young man, in his early 20s, said that his own mother had considered him dead since he converted. "She is still my mother," he said with pain and tenderness. "But now I have found a family that does not require me to hide who I am." Max looked me in the eyes and said with calm firmness, "Everyone here had to choose between what men say is sacred and what God actually says is true." I left there with my eyes blurred and my heart in ruins, but also more alive than ever. It was no longer a passing curiosity, nor an adolescent crisis trying to defy the world. This was faith, fragile, wavering, often terrified, but real. A faith that was beginning to take shape within me, even as it trembled under the weight of the consequences. I began underlining verses in my little Bible with a worn-out pencil. Then came the colored highlighters, a quiet way of holding on to what was rebuilding me from within. The first verse I committed to memory was John 14:6. "I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me." These words clashed with everything I had been taught since birth. Growing up in Kyrgyzstan means learning that tradition is not something to question. It is something to follow. Although religious freedom exists on paper, the reality is quite different. Especially in conservative homes like mine, conversion is not seen as a choice. It is a brutal rupture, almost a moral crime. It is not just disobeying your parents. It is severing the link with centuries of history. It is being called a traitor, a living shame to your own lineage. Is it worth it? This question haunted me during the sleepless nights. When fear gripped me more than faith, I asked myself, is it really worth losing everything for this? The answer didn't come with fireworks or visions of heaven. It came as a persistent whisper, a peace that made no sense. Yes, it's worth it. 1,000 times yes. The end of the semester brought winter and with it, vacation. I made up a lie so I wouldn't have to go home. I told my parents I had to finish an important project. "We miss you," my mother told me on the phone. "Your father thinks you're different. It's just tiredness from the tests," I replied, feeling a knot form in my stomach. The lie ate away at me. In the 3 months since I'd started attending clandestine meetings, I'd learned that truth was at the heart of the faith I was now trying to live. And yet, I lied. Lying to protect them. Lying to protect myself, but still, lying. On December 23rd, something happened that changed the course of everything. I received a message from my younger brother, Bakit. He was studying at a technical college, and our routines rarely crossed. My cell phone broke. "Can I use yours for a quick call to Dad? I'm around here near the Osh Bazaar." We met in a small, stuffy cafe tucked away among the stalls of the bazaar. I ordered a hot tea at the counter, left my unlocked phone on the table, an automatic, almost unconscious gesture. Years of trust shared between brothers. Years of believing that he would always be by my side. But when I came back with the cup in my hands, I found Bakit looking at me with a mixture of shock, disgust, and a pain I had never seen in his eyes before. "What is it, Gulnara?" The phone screen was open. Messages with Ainagul were displayed. Conversations about Jesus, about our encounters, verses that strengthened us, confessions of my nascent faith. I felt my blood run cold. My hands shook. "Bakit, I can explain." "Explain what?" His voice was already raised, angry, hurt. "That you became infidel, who threw away everything our family believes in, who spat in the face of our ancestors. It's not betrayal," I whispered desperately. "It's the truth. I found the truth." "The truth?" He spat the word as if it tasted like poison. "The colonizer's religion? Is that what you call truth? Gulnara, this will destroy our father. You know what he'll do when he finds out." In Central Asia, Christianity carries the weight of centuries of colonial associations. For many, it is seen not as a faith, but as a foreign imposition, a cultural poison. I knew this, and so did Bakit. I tried to take his hands. They were cold. "Please, let me tell you. Give me time. Just a little time." He recoiled as if he had touched fire. "It's too late. I already sent the conversations to Dad." At that moment, time stopped, as if the world had collapsed into silence. The confrontation I had feared most throughout my life was no longer a distant fear. It was now inevitable. It was right there, right in front of me, like a storm about to break. "Why?" was all I could say, my throat tight and my eyes filling with tears. Bucket didn't hesitate. "Because I love you," he replied with a sincerity that hurt more than any accusation. "Someone has to save you from yourself." That night, holed up in my room, I tried desperately to contact Ainagul. I texted, I called, I waited, but she didn't answer. Her silence weighed on me as heavily as the chaos around me. Meanwhile, my phone kept buzzing, calls and messages from my father, one after the other. I didn't answer. I couldn't. Deep down, I knew what was waiting for me. At midnight, the last message came. 5 words. "Come home immediately. Tomorrow." It wasn't a request. It was a verdict. The next morning, I walked home as if I were walking through a land devastated, not by bombs or disasters, but by unseen losses. My mother stood at the door. No smile, no hug. She just said, "He is in the office." I walked in. My father was waiting for me behind the desk, his dark eyes fixed on me. In front of him, printed, were the screenshots of my conversations with Ainagul, the proof of my betrayal. His face contained fury, but even more painful was the disappointment. "Do you have any idea what this means to us?" he began, his voice low and sharp. 3 generations of building respect, honor, reputation, and you destroy it all because of foreign doctrines. Tell me it's not true. Tell me it's just a misunderstanding. There was the easy way out. One lie and everything would go back to the way it was before. I could deny it, erase it all, and live in safety. But something inside me, something stronger than fear, refused to be silenced. "And truth," I said. My voice came out steady, even though my body was shaking. "I have found Christ." My father hit the table so hard that the picture frames shook. "Don't speak of truth. What do you know of truth? The beliefs of our ancestors have sustained us for centuries." I tried to explain myself. "Father, I am not rejecting our culture. I have found something that gives meaning to life, that has brought me peace, that has shown me love." But he didn't listen anymore. "Do you have any idea what a scandal this will cause? Your uncle leads prayers at the mosque. The neighbors are already talking. You've embarrassed us enough." At the door, my mother appeared beside Bucket. His face was pale. There was no more fury in his eyes, only fear. Fear for me. Then my father spoke with frightening calm, as if he were giving a sentence. "You have 2 choices. First, you renounce this madness. Burn everything connected with this faith. Write a letter of repentance. And I will arrange your marriage with Kubanich's son for the spring. Let us bury this as a youthful mistake." He paused, his gaze hard as rock. "Second, you pack your things and leave today, forever, dead to us, as if you never existed." "Light up!" my mother screamed, horrified. "You can't be serious." "I have never been so serious," he replied, without taking his eyes off me. "If she rejects everything we are, then she is no longer one of us." The silence that followed was like a void between 2 worlds. "You have 1 week," continued. 7 days. "Either your family or this foreign faith." And as if that weren't enough, he added, "Remember, without family, you are nobody in this country. Nobody will hire you. Nobody will help you. Here, the family name is everything." I left the office with weak legs, my heart broken. When I passed Bucket, he just whispered, "Sorry." And in that moment, I understood that my old life was over. I never imagined it would be like this. I thought the pain would come like a sharp blow, all at once, but it came slowly, like a mist that seeps into every corner of my soul. That night, as I lay in my old room, surrounded by the remnants of my childhood, school books, clippings taped to the wall, a dusty teddy bear, I opened my Bible, searching for some answer. My eyes fell on Matthew 19:29. "And everyone who has left houses or brothers or sisters or father or mother, for my name's sake will receive 100 times as much, and will inherit eternal life." Those words, which had seemed distant before, almost symbolic, now had real weight. They were flesh. They were blood. They stared back at me like a mirror. I had 7 days. 7 days to decide between the God who had met me in the silence and the family who had shaped my every feature. 7 days to weigh the invisible against everything that was familiar. Each day of that week was like crossing a desert, hot on the outside, cold on the inside. My father avoided me. His silence filled the house more than any shout. Meals, once noisy and lively, were now cold ceremonies, where the only sound was the clash of cutlery on plates. Every morning, I would sneak out into the backyard before the sun rose. The air would bite my face, and every breath would turn to vapor. There, alone, I would pray quietly, "Lord, if you are really real, then show me. Show me what to do." On the third day, I was surprised by my mother in the kitchen. The house was still asleep. She leaned against the counter and stared at me for a while, as if trying to recognize who I was now. "Why, Gulnara?" she asked, her voice breaking. "Why choose something that will tear you away from us?" I took a deep breath. "You gave me everything, Mom. Everything. But I found something that completes me in a way I never thought possible. And that's worth more than your family?" I didn't answer. Or maybe I had an answer that I didn't have the courage to say. "Your father won't change his mind," she continued. "If you choose this, we will lose him. And maybe we will lose you too." On the fourth day, my younger sister, Aliyah, came into my room. She was 17 and the perfect daughter, just like I had been. She sat on the edge of my bed with a look in her eyes that I couldn't read. "If you leave," she said with a painful calm, "I will be alone. They will expect me to be perfect, to make up for their absence." Then came the question that struck me like a bolt of lightning. "Is he real?" I remained silent, but not out of doubt, because of the depth of the answer. "Yes, he is real to me. More real than anything I have ever known." Aliyah looked down, nodded slowly. "If you really are, I want you to know that I don't hate you." On the fifth day, I met Max, the leader of the small community that had taken me in. He listened patiently as I broke down. "I can't tell you what to do," he said, "but I can promise you one thing. If you choose to follow Christ, you will never be alone." I looked at him with my heart in my hand. "But it won't be the same. They won't be my mother, my father, my brothers." He took a deep breath. "No, it won't be. It's a real sacrifice. Jesus never promised it would be easy, but he promised he would be with you. Always. How will I know if I'm making the right decision?" I asked. "Peace," he replied. "The peace that surpasses all understanding. Not the peace that makes sense, but the peace that remains in the midst of the storm." That night, back in my room, I opened my Bible one last time before going to sleep. My eyes fell upon Mark 10:29-30. "Truly I tell you, there is no one who has left home or brothers or sisters or father or mother, for my sake and the gospel's, who will not receive 100-fold now, in this age and in the age to come, eternal life." The words wrapped around me like an invisible blanket. The sixth day was approaching, and with it, the final decision. "And you will receive 100-fold now in this time, and in the age to come, eternal life." On the sixth day, the sun rose brightly, almost mocking the chaos within me. From my bedroom window, the Alatau Mountains stretched out in the distance, steady, impassive. They had seen wars, empires fall, families break apart, and here I was, just another soul standing before the abyss, about to make a choice that would change everything. My father called me into the office. He looked smaller, not physically, but in his eyes. The fatigue of that week seemed to have sucked years out of his life. The hardness was still there, but now with a barely noticeable crack. "This isn't just about religion, Gulnara," he said, his voice lower than usual. "It's about survival. Without your family, you're nobody in this country. Nobody's going to want to hire you. Nobody's going to protect you." There was fear in his speech, and for a moment, I saw something that looked like love, twisted, hard, but still love. "You can still go back," he continued, "but if you walk out that door, there's no going back." I nodded silently. I left the office as if I were carrying the weight of the world on my shoulders. I spent the night awake. My body was tired, but my soul seemed to float between two worlds. And then it happened. In the middle of the night, alone in the dark, a peace so intense invaded me that I cried without making a sound. It wasn't a peace made of the absence of pain. It was a rock-solid certainty. I knew what I needed to do. The next morning, I calmly put on my clothes and packed my backpack. Simple clothes, a toothbrush, my Bible hidden at the bottom, and a photo of our family still together. The essentials. What I could take with me from the life I was about to leave behind. The house was strangely quiet. My mother, pale, moved as if in a dream, setting cups on the table for a breakfast that no one would touch. My father was already seated, his newspaper spread out as a shield. The paper trembled in his hands. I gripped my cup tightly. I knew it would be that moment. "It's time, Gulnara," he said without looking up. "What is your decision?" Everything I had rehearsed disappeared. Only the truth remained. "I found something that changed everything," I replied, without stuttering. "A relationship with Jesus. He gives me peace. He gives me meaning. And I can't give that up. Not even for you." For a second, I thought he was going to scream. But what came was worse. He closed his eyes slowly, as if he were blowing out the last candle of hope. When he opened them, something in him had died. "Then it is done," he muttered. "You are no longer our daughter." My mother let out a short sigh, almost a suppressed sob. My father, implacable, continued, "Pack your things, leave today, and never come back. Your name will be erased from this house. Your picture will be taken down from the walls. As far as we are concerned, you are dead." It wasn't anger. It was a verdict, a ritual of exclusion. I walked back to my room, trembling. There was my backpack, like a silent witness. When I went to get it, someone knocked on the door. It was Aaliyah. She walked in without saying anything and stood there, her eyes red. Finally, she asked, "Are you really going?" "I go," I replied, trying to smile. I took her hands in mine. "But how will you live? Where will you go?" I smiled again, with a peace that didn't even seem to come from me. "God will take care of me. I know He will." She hugged me tightly, as if she never wanted to let me go. "I won't forget you," whispered. "It doesn't matter what Daddy says." Before I left, I handed her a small piece of paper with my phone number on it. "Hide it well. If you ever want to talk to me for any reason, call. I'll be waiting. If you need me, just call." Those words echoed in me as I walked down the hallway. When I passed through the living room door, I met my mother, her eyes filled with emotions that were hard to contain. Almost in a whisper, she said, "My daughter, how can I let you go?" I took a deep breath and tried to comfort her. "Mom, this isn't a final goodbye. Who knows? Maybe one day our paths will cross again." She shook her head slowly, with that heavy look that only those who know my father can understand. "You know how he is. Once he decides something, there's no going back." Then she handed me a handkerchief with a wad of money in it, all she had saved for emergencies. It was the last gesture of love she could give me. I held the handkerchief in my trembling hands and said, "I love you, Mom." She touched my face tenderly and responded, for the first time mentioning God without judgment. "I love you too. May God protect you." The end came with cruel calm. My father was waiting for me at the door, his posture rigid, his gaze lost in the distance. No words were spoken, only a subtle gesture indicating that I should leave. I crossed the threshold without looking back. Each step took me away from the past and into an uncertain, unknown future. When the door closed with a sharp click, I was alone on Nevada Street, a young woman of 19, with a backpack and a Bible clutched to my chest. Tears fell down my face, mingling with the softly falling snowflakes. "Lord," I whispered, looking up at the gray sky, "I only have you now." And then an unexpected peace enveloped me. It wasn't the absence of pain, but the knowledge that something greater was sustaining me, something that surpassed the harshest rejection. With hesitant steps, I began walking toward the tram stop. There was no plan in place, just the need to get to a safe place. The university was my temporary haven, a refuge where I could think about my next steps. The streets of Bishki, once so familiar, now seemed strange, as if I were seeing everything for the first time. I had chosen the narrow path that Jesus spoke of, the path that few have the courage to tread. Time would tell where this would lead me. The harsh Kyrgyz winter has no mercy for the weak and no concessions for the helpless. After being thrown out of my home, I found temporary shelter in the Ainagul dormitory, but it soon became clear that my stay there would be short. The rules were firm. No visitor could stay more than 3 nights at a time. On the 4th night after my expulsion, I ended up sleeping at the Bishki train station. I sat on a wooden bench in the waiting room, hugging my backpack tightly, the Bible hidden but always close, my anchor in the chaos. "First time here, huh?" A soft voice broke the silence. I looked over and saw an old woman with a wrinkled face, carrying the hard story of her life in her eyes. She introduced herself as Rosa, a former teacher from Naryn, who, after the collapse of the Soviet Union, had lost everything, including her home. That night, Rosa became my unlikely guardian, teaching me where I could wash without being noticed by the guards, and which corners of the station were safest to spend the night. Later, as I shared a piece of bread with a young man, he asked me, "Why are you here, all alone?" I took a deep breath and replied, "My family kicked me out because of my faith." He smiled, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Christian, right? I can see it in your eyes. It seems like you see something that everyone else doesn't. And so, little by little, a survival routine was formed, where faith, more than ever, became my foundation. During the day, I attended classes, trying to blend in, wearing a mask of normalcy. I used the university bathrooms to clean myself, hid my clothes in a small locker, and spent hours in the library until the library closed. When night fell, I returned to the train station, a noisy place, full of people coming and going, that offered me the comfort of anonymity. The money my mother gave me disappeared quickly, and soon I found myself rummaging through the trash cans behind cafes, looking for scraps of food. Hunger was a constant shadow, a nuisance that never left me. One cold February afternoon, I wrapped my coat tighter around me, and, half out of curiosity, half because of the cold that froze my bones, I entered a small church that I found on the street. The room was warm and lit by the soft glow of several candles. "Can I help you?" A calm voice surprised me. It was a middle-aged woman with a kind smile. "I just needed a place to stay for a while," I replied sincerely. She introduced herself as Sister Natalia, and her eyes conveyed deep compassion. "You look exhausted and hungry," she said. I couldn't hold back the tears that had been building silently for weeks. She led me to a small room behind the altar and offered me hot tea, brown bread, and a piece of cheese. "Eat," she said softly. "Then, if you want, you can tell me your story." So I did. I told her about my family, my faith, the ultimatum I had received, the freezing nights at the station, the hunger, the fear that never seemed to leave me. After listening to me, she said firmly, "There is a place for you, a shelter for young Christians who need a safe home while they study." The next day, she took me to the House of Hope, a simple building on the outskirts of Bishke, in the Tunguch neighborhood. There I met Damira Bekova, a Kyrgyz woman in her 50s who ran the shelter. A former university student, Damira had created the space after her own conversion. "Here it's not about where you come from, but where you want to go," she said, showing me my room, which I would be sharing with another girl. The rules were clear: respect, help with daily chores, and attending classes if you were a student. For the first time in weeks, I lay in a real bed. That night, I knelt down and thanked God for what I could only call a miracle, a haven in the midst of chaos. The House of Hope housed 12 young people, many of them students, who had ended up on the streets for various reasons. In exchange for shelter and food, each worked 4 hours a day. I was assigned to help in the kitchen, where I learned to prepare simple but nutritious meals with just a few ingredients. Each evening ended with a special time, group prayer. Sitting in a circle, we shared our stories, fears, and small victories. It was on one of these evenings that I was finally able to put a name to the pain I was carrying, a pain that now, for the first time, I felt I could overcome. It wasn't just the pain of losing my family, but also the weight of guilt for having somehow disappointed them. That's when Jesus came into my life in a new way. I remember Damira telling me a verse one night that helped me make sense of it all. "If anyone comes to me and does not hate his father and mother, he cannot be my disciple." It wasn't a call to hate, but a reminder of the harsh reality that following Jesus can sometimes bring, especially when it means going against everything you know. Slowly, my life began to come together. The wounds didn't disappear, but they stopped bleeding uncontrollably. Routine became my safe haven. Classes in the morning, kitchen work in the afternoon, studying at night. On the weekends, I helped out with social projects, distributing food to the homeless, many of whom slept on the same benches where I had once been. It was on one of those days that I met Rosa again. "Look who's back," she exclaimed, surprised and happy to see me serving hot soup. The little Christian with that look that sees beyond what others see. "You found your place, haven't you?" She didn't ask, she said. "I've found people who accept me," I replied. "You can always come with us, Rosa. There's room for you there." She shook her head, a sad smile etched into the lines on her face. "My time for change has passed, girl, but I'm glad to see that yours is just beginning." That night, Damira walked with me in silence, until she spoke in her calm, steady voice. "Do you know what I see in you now, Gulnara? Someone learning that family is not just those who share your blood. Sometimes true family is the one God puts by your side just when you need it most." Those words touched my heart deeply. I had lost my blood family, but I found a community that welcomed me precisely because of the faith that had separated me from them. On a cold April morning, as winter was beginning to set in, I was sitting on a bench near the university, studying for my final exams. Despite everything, I wanted to keep my scholarship. Hunger was a constant specter, even with shelter and food guaranteed. My body, accustomed to the abundance of before, seemed to complain with every moment. As I tried to focus, a shadow appeared before me. It was an elderly man holding a paper bag. "Sorry to interrupt," he said softly, "but I thought I should give you this." He held out the bag, and inside it was a warm loaf of bread, still smelling of the oven. My stomach growled unceremoniously. "Thank you," I murmured, surprised. "But why?" The man smiled with a twinkle in his eyes. "Sometimes God tells us to do things we don't quite understand." Before I could respond, he turned and walked away, leaving behind a simple but meaningful gesture. With shaking hands, I broke open the bread, and in the folds of the bag, I found a piece of paper with a verse written on it. "Behold, I stand at the door and knock." The message seemed to speak directly to my heart, as if God were telling me that even in my solitude, He would never abandon me. If anyone hears my voice and opens the door, I will come into him and eat with him, and he with me. Revelation 3:20. As soon as I read those words, the tears began to flow uncontrollably. It was the very verse I had underlined in my Bible the night before I was thrown out of my home, a verse that no one in Bishkek seemed to know, but it had such special meaning to me. I opened my Bible and, with my heart racing, flipped to Revelation 3:20. There it was, marked with a yellow highlighter, just like the paper I now held in my hands. This couldn't be just a coincidence. I sat down in the pew, completely overcome with emotion. These were not tears of sadness, but of profound relief. In that moment, I felt as if the veil between the seen and unseen worlds had been torn apart, and I could feel God's tender personal care enveloping me. When I calmed down, I carefully tucked the paper into my Bible, next to the highlighted verse. It became my talisman, my constant reminder that even on the hardest days, God was with me. That night, during group prayer at Casa Esperanza, I shared my experience. Some listened with shining eyes, others with gentle skepticism. "You don't have to prove anything to anyone," Demira told me later. "Moments like these are sacred and personal. What matters is what they mean to you." In that moment, I knew for sure, despite the price I had paid, my choice to follow the truth had been worth every tear. In the weeks that followed, something changed inside me. The pain for my family was still there, but it no longer paralyzed me. Sadness gave way to determination. I began looking for a more stable job. Until then, I had been doing odd jobs, cleaning offices, handing out flyers, anything to supplement the money I received from Casa Esperanza. The opportunity came at a cafe where I was cleaning tables. I overheard two foreigners talking in English about a project. I shyly approached them and said, "Sorry, I couldn't help but overhear." They were looking for someone who spoke Kyrgyz and Russian to help out at an NGO that worked with rural communities. They needed someone to handle correspondence in 3 languages and help with translations during village visits. The impromptu interview turned into an offer the next day. The pay wasn't great, but it meant stability, and the chance to use my skills for something that really mattered. "Your story is exactly why we want you on the team," said Elsa, one of the coordinators. "You understand both worlds, the traditional and the modern. You can be a bridge between them." Those words resonated deeply with me. For the first time, I began to see my journey not just as a tragedy, but as a preparation for something greater. Perhaps all the rejection, all the pain, and those cold nights at the train station had a purpose that I was only just beginning to see. My first year away from my family was a time of profound transformation. While working at the NGO and continuing my studies, I began to build a life I never imagined. A life of independence, full of meaning, and rooted in a faith that grew with each challenge I overcame. With my first salary, I was able to rent a simple room, but just for myself. It was small, with barely enough space for a bed, a desk, and a wardrobe. But for me, it was a treasure. My own space, my own independence. Working with John and Elsa, directors of an NGO that developed projects in rural communities, took me to remote parts of Kyrgyzstan. As I translated conversations about irrigation systems and educational programs, I began to realize something I hadn't expected. Despite my family's rejection, I felt more connected to my culture than ever before. "It's amazing how you talk to the village elders," John once commented. "You show genuine respect for tradition, even after all you've been through." I answered honestly, "I don't reject our culture, What I reject is the idea that it has to be a prison. Our traditions have beauty and wisdom, but they can also become chains when used to control rather than guide. During these trips, my mind often returned to my family. What were my parents like? Was my mother still secretly grieving my absence? And my father? Had he completely erased me from his life? One afternoon in the village of Kochor, an elderly woman took my arm as I poured tea. "You have the look of someone who has lost her home," she said, her voice weathered with age. "I lost mine when I was young, like you. The Russians took our land from us, but I found another. You will too." His words hit me hard, like a well-aimed arrow. I was so lost, so uprooted, that it showed in my eyes. That night, in the small room I shared with Elsa, I cried silently. It wasn't out of pity, but because I finally faced a truth I'd been putting off. I was still looking for my home. "She's right," Elsa told me calmly. "But finding a new home doesn't mean forgetting the old one. It's building something strong enough to carry the pain of loss, along with the joy of what's to come." I started attending a small multicultural church near the Osh Bazaar. There I found a community that understood this duality. Many, mostly Kyrgyz and Uzbek, had been rejected by their families for similar reasons. It was there that I met Adalet, a 23-year-old whose story seemed to echo my own. The son of a respected imam from Narin, he had discovered Christianity while studying in Turkey and was rejected as harshly as I had been. But after 3 years of separation, his mother began to speak to him secretly. "These are baby steps," he said. "My mother still doesn't accept my faith, but she has chosen to let her love for me outweigh her disapproval. My father doesn't know about the conversations, and my brothers still think I'm dead." I asked him how he could stand living in this division, in this limbo. Adalet smiled, a smile that held both pain and hope at the same time. "I've discovered that forgiveness isn't a one-time thing, but a daily journey. Every day I choose to forgive my family again, not because they deserve it, but because I need that decision to find peace." Adalet's words planted a seed in my heart. Until then, I had struggled between the pain of rejection and an almost naive hope that one day everything would magically work itself out. I had never thought of a third path, forgiveness as a constant choice, regardless of what others do or respond. I began to practice this forgiveness, including my family in my prayers, not with simplistic requests, but with genuine blessings, even though I knew I could continue to be rejected. My life took on a new rhythm. During the week, I work at the NGO. On Saturdays, I go to classes, and on Sundays, I attend church. I also began translating short Christian texts into Kyrgyz, finding a way to connect my cultural roots with the faith that now sustained me. The second year away from home brought profound changes. The NGO gave me more responsibilities, and I was finally able to move into a small apartment of my own. My circle of friends grew, and the story I had previously hidden out of shame gradually became something I could share. "I question traditions too, but I don't have your courage," confided a classmate. "I follow the rules, but inside I'm silently rebelling." I admire her honesty, even though it came at a great cost. These conversations showed me that my experience was not unique. Many young Kyrgyz, educated and exposed to the modern world, but raised in rigid traditions, were also searching for a path that honored their roots without losing their authenticity. Then, one afternoon in May, almost 2 years after I'd left home, I received a message that made my heart stop for a moment. "I'll be at Navaden Cafe. I miss you." It was Aliyah, my younger sister, the only one in the family who kept an invisible thread with me, through that secret number I had given her. For years, I had hardly used that contact, until now. The night before the meeting was filled with doubts and questions. How was she? What news would she bring from the family? Was this a trap, an attempt by my father to lure me back? The Navaden Cafe, known for its traditional pastries, was a public, safe place. I arrived 20 minutes early and chose a table in a hidden corner that overlooked the entrance. And then she appeared. Aliyah had changed a lot. From a teenager, she had become a different young woman. Her hair, once long, was now cropped to shoulder length. She was wearing jeans and a modern blouse, far from the conservative attire our mother had always expected. We looked at each other for a second that seemed to last an eternity. And then, without saying a word, we hugged. A strong and desperate hug, as if we were trying to make up for all the hugs we had missed during our separation. "I missed you so much," she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. We sat there, still holding hands, as if we were afraid that if we let go, the other might disappear. The questions flowed like a mighty river. I finally got the courage to ask about our parents. "Mom cries in secret," Aliyah replied, lowering her voice. "On your birthday, she locked herself in the bathroom for hours. Dad pretends you don't exist. He took down all your pictures, but one night I caught him looking at your graduation photo, the one he keeps on his desk." Each word was a bittersweet mix of pain and comfort. Pain at confirming my father's continued rejection. Comfort at knowing that perhaps in moments of loneliness, he still felt something for his wayward daughter. "And you?" I asked, squeezing his hands. "How has all this affected you?" Aliyah took a deep breath, gathering her courage. "At first I hated you," she confessed, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "I hated you for leaving, for abandoning me, for choosing those strange beliefs about us. Dad made me repeat that I no longer had a sister, that you were dead to the family. I repeated it, but I never believed it." She paused, taking a sip of tea. "But something changed. I began to wonder why my sister, whom I knew better than anyone, would sacrifice everything for this faith. What could be so powerful? I began to investigate secretly. My heart was racing. "I'm not a Christian," she continued, reading my unspoken hope. "At least not yet. But I'm not the Muslim father he thinks I am either. I'm searching. I wanted you to know that, to understand that your sacrifice has opened a door for me, a door to questions I would never have dared to ask if I hadn't seen your courage." The tears I had been holding back finally fell. They were not tears of sadness, but of profound joy. My expulsion, my pain, my loneliness, everything took on new meaning in the face of that revelation. "Be careful," I warned, remembering the high price she had already paid. "If Dad finds out, I know." She nodded, determined. "I am more cautious than you. I have learned from your experience. I hope to graduate next year, and then maybe I can be more independent." We talked for hours, catching up after 2 years apart. When we said goodbye, she hugged me again. "Thank you," she whispered in my ear. "Thank you for showing me that it's possible to choose your own path, even when it's hard. I hope I have the same strength as you when it's my turn." I returned to my small apartment that night with my heart overflowing. Meeting Aliyah was an unexpected gift, a confirmation that even in the most painful circumstances, God can weave threads of hope and purpose. 5 years have passed since I last walked through the door of my house. It's been 5 years since I chose to follow my faith, even though I knew it meant giving up my family, the traditions I'd always known, and the security of what was expected of me. Today, at 24, I look back and barely recognize the life I imagined for myself as a child. Instead of being trapped in an arranged marriage and a routine I didn't choose, I live as an independent woman, building a career that truly matters. I graduated with honors in international law and work on projects that help young women achieve their own financial independence. The faith I began to cultivate back when everything seemed to be falling apart has become the firm foundation that sustains me, my constant guide through life's ups and downs. My sister Aliyah and I have managed to stay in touch, although it has to be done carefully, away from the prying eyes of our community. She is in medical school and lives in the residence hall, where she has the freedom to explore her questions and pursuits. She recently told me that she is reading the New Testament that I gave to her, and even to our parents. Despite this, the atmosphere at home remains filled with silence and distance. My name is avoided, ignored. Aliyah told me that my mother aged early, as if the weight of this rejection was consuming her strength and joy. My father remains firm in his stance, never mentioning me, but sometimes he talks about my studies or my life in such an indirect tone that only Aliyah understands that he is talking about me. I've tried many times to send messages, letters, and even gifts on important dates, but everything comes back unopened. The rejection seems total, at least on the surface. But Aliyah insists that she sees small cracks in the ice, moments when regret almost appears. This brings a mix of pain and hope to my heart. There are days when I miss someone so much that it feels like it's going to break me, especially on birthdays or holidays, when the culture around us emphasizes the importance of family even more. Being the one who was left out, the one who was erased, is like always being in between worlds, without a place where I truly belong. But I've learned that I can carry sadness without letting it define me. The joy I find in my new faith family, my friends, my work that makes me feel alive, and my relationship with God is what keeps me going. This support network is my strength on the hardest days. Your story has power, Brother Kubet once told me, and I understood that it is not despite the pain, but because of it, that my story can illuminate other paths. It is a cost that is worth every tear, because it shows that even when all seems lost, the truth can be a beacon that guides us to freedom. I didn't choose this path out of courage or heroism. I chose it because, faced with the truth I had discovered, there was simply no other way out. Sometimes I wonder what my life would have been like if I had made a different choice. If I had denied my faith, accepted the arranged marriage, followed the safe and expected path. Perhaps I would have the comfort of belonging to a family, the security of a defined social identity, the warmth of community approval, but at the cost of losing something much greater, the freedom to be true to myself, to live a life where what I feel in my heart is also reflected in what I do. A few weeks ago, while translating a passage from the Gospel of Mark, I stopped at the words of Jesus. Truly I tell you, there is no one who has left house or brothers or sisters or father or mother or children or lands, for my sake and the Gospel's, who will not receive 100 times as much now in this age, houses, brothers, sisters, mothers, children and lands, even if persecutions, and in the age to come eternal life. I read and reread those words, letting them echo within me. It was not an empty promise, nor a poetic exaggeration. It was a faithful portrait of what I was experiencing. I left my home, yes, but I found many homes where I was welcomed. I lost my biological parents, but I gained spiritual parents who love me and guide me. I was separated from my blood brothers, but I gained brothers and sisters in faith who were willing to risk everything for me, just as I was for them. And of course, I also experienced the persecutions Jesus mentioned: rejection, loneliness, cold nights at the station, hunger, and fear. These pains were not miraculously erased, but right alongside them, a new life was born, one full of purpose, meaning, and true community. It is this story that I share today with those who are faced with a difficult choice. The path is narrow, the cost is high, and the pain is real. But the reward, freedom, meaning, true community, a living relationship with God, is far greater than what we leave behind. I still hold out hope, not a naive hope, but a resilient hope, that one day my family and I will be able to reconcile. I pray for that and work toward it where I can. But I no longer let that possibility define my worth or my happiness. If you who are listening to me are at a similar crossroads, torn between impossible loyalties, I want to tell you, there is life after rejection. There is community after exclusion. There is purpose in pain. And most of all, there is a God who sees every tear, honors every sacrifice made for the sake of truth, and promises to walk with us to the end. I was forced to choose between my family and my faith. I chose faith. I lost my family, but in the midst of this process, I found my true home.